Reconnect with Rockers. All right, Peach is over here, Herb over there. We're reunited, and it feels so good. I'm with my good friend, Steve Brown. I don't even know how to introduce you because, I'm going to say like Steve Brown, who people may know the best, of course, from Trixter. But, we've had over 30 years of history of friendship.
Yeah.
You were my first WDHA interview. I believe Trixter, one of your first interviews as Trixter was coming to WDHA, the hometown radio station.
It was, and that was right when our record was released. I think it was probably mid-June of 1990, and I remember Pete and I, it was during, it was a hot summer day. We drove up there, and for us, growing up in Bergen County, Paramus, driving up to like Morristown, Cedar Knolls area, man, that was like we might as well have been going to Virginia. You know what I mean? So we were driving up there like, where the hell is
this? To the country, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And,
I think Patty Riscona got you guys up there too. Patty Riscona was with the record label.
Yes,
and Patty reminds me of that a lot. And it was us and Patty Riscona. And that's what I love. See, I love doing full circle stuff with you, whether it's with Zach Wilde, people that I have a history with, an affinity with. And I feel like we were all kids coming up together at that magical time, 30 years ago. So there's so much to talk about. I want to talk to you about a great track that you have out called Where Do We Run? That's so, focuses on all of your great talents and the Wizards of Winter. But I want to really go back a little bit, and I want to talk about that kid from Paramus, that Jersey kid. So when was it your minute? When was the moment, that epiphany, where the world changed for Steve Brown?
Well, I would definitely have to go back to 1978, where it was, I was 8 years old, Paramus, New Jersey, and discovering Kiss, Rock and Roll Over, and Van Halen 1. They were the two records that introduced me to rock and roll. My family, my parents, my brothers, very musical. Nobody played. We're a sports family, but my brothers and my parents, we would always listen to music. So it was Elvis, the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac. My brother Chris was into the B-52s and all the cool new wave stuff. And I remember it was always a musical household. At 5 o'clock, my dad would always have on Neil Diamond live at the Greek Theater. And then something happened where I was by my brother Mike, his girlfriend at the time, who's my sister-in-law, Mary Ann. I was over at their house on the other side of Paramus, and I went into her brother's room and I saw this record, and it was Kiss, Rock and Roll Over. And I swear to God, Tara, I could swear there was smoke coming out of it, and it was calling me. It said, Steve, Gene Simmons going, Steve, you need to pick up this record. And I remember walking to his room, and I was just looking at the cover, hadn't heard anything, and I was looking at it, and all of a sudden, Paulie came in, who was my sister-in-law Mary Ann's brother, and he said, Steve, you need to borrow this record. These guys are really cool. You're going to love it. And I remember taking it home, and it was just like, what is this going to sound like? And I remember dropping the needle down on my little, record player, because that's what we had back then. And I remember hearing the beginning of I Want You, and I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. Sounds like the Beatles, sounds like, kind of sounds like Rod Stewart, in the morning I raise my head. And then all of a sudden, it was like I was like transformed. I was thrown into a Kiss concert because my mind, when the band kicked in, I Want You, that was it for me. The explosions were going off in my room. My mind was completely blown. I'm sure you've heard this story so many times from so many people. It was that immediate and that powerful for me. And then fast forward a couple months later, my neighbor up the street, Tommy Walsh, I'll never forget it. He had known my friend and I, we were really into Kiss. And he comes walking down the street and he had this 8-track tape. And he goes, Steve, you need to hear this band. Gene Simmons from Kiss discovered him. And it was Van Halen. And I remember looking at the cover going, wow, this is cool. And Eddie holding up, the black and white guitar. I'm like, this is going to be good. And I remember putting it on my 8-track. I had that click 8-track player, that
Oh yeah.
portable thing,
Oh yeah.
and hearing. And I remember, and the sequencing was weird on 8-tracks, but I remember Running with the Devil, hearing the car horns and the kicking in, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then, of course, as you know, hearing Eruption. And I was like, and I had already known what guitar was. I was a big Ace Frehley fan by that point, but hearing Eddie, and by the time he got to the end, the tapping part, I didn't know. I was like circling around my room, and a couple months later, after I started playing guitar, one of my guitar teachers played it again, and I remember and just going to myself, what is that? Is that a guitar? Is it a violin through an amp? I couldn't even. Was it keyboard synthesizer? Because it almost sounded like the 70s. Oh, it could have been like Dennis DeYoung on a stick solo in the 70s. And it was just those two things completely transformed my life forever, and I always say it, in 1978, I sold my soul to rock and roll, and I'm still running with the devil,
I love that.
40
I love
plus
that.
years later. And so that was it. And then it was, a journey that is still going. And, I consider myself one of the luckiest guys in the world because of that.
Well, you're very lucky and also very talented. You're a very diverse artist. You have a great diversity about you. Talented, very, very underrated, amazing ear. And this is also why I wanted to have you on the feature too, because I don't know if everybody knows this about you. You're a producer, obviously a songwriter, musician, phenomenal guitar player, great vocalist. When also, and still want to go back to the 30th anniversary of Trixter playing the Meadowlands, which was this year. I think it was April of this year. But I wanted to talk to you about, when did you, because I think the thing that has been so great for you is being a working musician is more important than being a rock star. And I look at, I've had Waddy Wachtel, Danny Korchmar on this feature. Waddy and Danny are people that'll be working forever. Songwriters, amazing musicians, people that play on everyone's record. You seem to sort of be like, listen, not really that interested. I got to a certain point in my life, not that interested in being a rock star. I want to be a working musician. Here are all the things I can do. When was that moment for you when you realized how much you could really offer to the craft that you love so much?
Well, I mean, that's a great, thank you so much for all the kind words, but it really goes back to the beginning when I started, and as the years when I started playing guitar, and then, I started Trixter when I was 12 years old. So, again, the immediate love of music, all aspects of it. I tell everybody, man, when I was a kid, I knew who Kiss and Van Halen's booking agents were. I knew who their managers were. I knew who all their techs were. I knew who drove the trucks for Kiss.
You guys got backstage with no passes all the time to the Trixter guys. You guys knew the trap door. You were going down section 110 down that trap door.
So it was always, from the beginning, it was always the love of all aspects of it. Marketing. I learned that, no matter how good of a musician or band you are, you got to market yourselves. We spent Trixter, our marketing, nowadays there was no social media back then. We used to go to the Paramus Park Mall with flyers, and every Saturday before our Sunday China Club shows in Hillsdale, New Jersey, they're all ages, and we would promo. And that was, we didn't have the Sunset Strip, but we had the Paramus Park and all the malls, and
the roller rink. You guys were at the roller rink.
The roller rink, Willowbrook Mall, Garden State Plaza, anywhere. But what you were saying, when was it it was always part of me. And what you said about being a musician and being a rock star, I really learned that from my friendship with Ed and Alex Van Halen, because one of their things, and Ed especially always told me, he said, Steve, we're musicians. I don't give a crap about this rock star shit. I don't care about any of this. I care about making music. you know, and Ed always told me, and one of the great things is, you know, my studio here, and funny story is when, you know, and this is of course the reason that I've become, you know, a producer, engineer, songwriter, you know, kind of what I said, I make a joke all the time. You know, my goal in life is being a mini Mutt Lang. I love
Mini
being
Mutt,
that
yeah, Mini Mutt.
producer, songwriter, and doing, and that's what I do, and that's what I love. But, you know, when I was building my studio back in the day, when I first bought this house that you know, we've been in here, Cosette and I and the family, for 28 years, you know, when I built this studio, and it was right at the time Van Halen was out on tour. And I remember we went up to see him up in Connecticut, and I told Ed I was building a studio, and he's like, "Oh, you're building a, you know, studio to make demos?" And I go, "No, man. I'm building a real studio like you, man." I said, "You have 5150. My studio is going to be called 6160." You know, and he was cracking up. We were laughing about it, but it's true, you know, to be able to have this. And, you know, look, back in the day, I did very well, you know, with Trixter's success. But instead of buying Ferraris and cars and stupid stuff, I built a studio. And it was the greatest investment that I ever made, you know, with my money, besides buying the house. You know, I tell everybody this is the house that Trixter bought me. But I also built this studio, which has been, without question, the most important purchase and investment of my life. You know, and it was always, again, going back to what I was saying about musicians and rock stars, there's a big difference. And you can see, you know, guys in bands who are the real musicians and the guys who just wanted to be rock stars. I know it in my band, my old band, where certain members of my band are now. They ain't still musicians. You know, they're working day jobs and doing it. And that, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a difference why PJ Farley and myself, no matter what, whether it's playing stadiums with Def Leppard or playing the Fireside in Denville, you know what I mean, back in the day, it didn't matter to me, or it doesn't matter to PJ. This is what we do. We're musicians. So Ed Van Halen and I, we were talking about this, and he said, you know, he said, "Steve, we're musicians. We make music, motherfucker." You know, and he would say it just like he was so, everything he ever taught me. And because, you know, being my biggest influence and such a friend for so long, he was always so simple. And it was so funny how people dissect and try to do this with Van Halen and Ed's guitar. And it was everything he ever said to me, and his advice was so simple, you know. And most important, him and Alex, it was always what they learned from their father, because they were real musicians.
Yeah.
And they never had the rock star trip, you know, that other guys in their band, the singers or whatever in their band had. But, and that's always my thing. So, and really what it comes down to, Terrie, the most important thing is this is what I love to do. This is love for me, whether it's playing Wembley Stadium with Def Leppard, or being in my studio creating, writing songs, or producing somebody else's songs.
Well, I've known you a long time, and you're a happy guy too. You're never the guy who's, you know, kind of pissy and mad at the world. And, you know, you guys have had, you and PJ especially, you know, total level heads, moved through your lives, you know, being family guys and musicians. And you're that guy. You still look like the guy in the "Give It to Me Good" video. You still look 18. And that's a good thing. And that's because you're a happy dude. You're a happy guy. So the 30th anniversary rolls around, and you put together this, like, I loved the documentary kind of thing you put up on YouTube. Somebody told me to watch it. Is it called like The Dream Come True or something?
Yeah.
And it just really harkens back to a great history of when the band played the Meadowlands, the Brendan Byrne Arena. You know, for those of us, I was there opening night for the Springsteen show as a kid. You know, that place meant so much to me.
Yeah, of course.
And you just had such a wonderful perspective. Because I think sometimes people look back at their careers and there are good parts and there's the bitter parts, and, you know, but you just had such an awesome perspective about what it was like to be a kid playing a giant arena for the very first time, and you're in your local home. I love the story too, when you're like, listen, I had to get out of there early because my mom was throwing a party for the neighborhood. Like, that was the best thing ever.
Oh, of course.
You know, and my now brother-in-law or whatever, like, we made a cake, and like, it was just so awesome.
Yeah.
And so you look back on that. Does it feel like 30 years? Does it feel like 3 years, or does it feel like 300 years
You
ago?
know, it goes back again. I have every memory of it like yesterday. And, I mean, it's incredible at 51 years old, I mean, Jesus, 30 years ago. And, where do I start with it? I mean, like I said it on the YouTube, on the documentary, that was the most important thing for Trixter ever. It was never about making videos. It was never about making records. All we ever wanted to do when we were young was play the Meadowlands Arena, like Van Halen, like Kiss, Bon Jovi, of course. And we were there in 1985 when Bon Jovi opened for Rat on the Invasion of Your Privacy tour. It was the 7,800 degrees thing, and we
I think
were
I was
like,
there too. We were
yeah,
all
when
there. That
Bon
was a
Jovi,
Jersey thing, right?
remember
Right.
that when Bon Jovi got their gold records.
Yep.
And I remember we were all sitting there. I was me and Pete and our departed dear friend Jim DeSalvo, who's not here with us anymore, but we were there, and I remember looking at those guys and I said, that's going to be us in a couple years. And it happened. But, that's the funny thing about it. It was when we were, rising, and, nothing ever felt like work to us. We rehearsed every day in my parents' house, and we just kept going up the ladder. And it was, of course, you were there. It was the time, and of course we have Bon Jovi to thank. And, John was the first guy who ever got behind Trixter. We gave him our first demo tape back in right before Slippery When Wet broke up. I mean, when Slippery broke through and blew up, and they were the biggest band in the world. But John was the first real rock star to get behind us. He introduced us to the Skid Row guys, to Snake and Rachel and Scotty, and we became like, we all became the Brotherhood, if you remember that. And so playing the Meadowlands, to be there again with your family, the friends, your teachers. I mean, it was everybody. And the coolest part, like you said before, we would be backstage at all the shows beforehand. Before we ever played in the 80s, we were sneaking backstage. We never had passes. All the security guys, oh, it's the Trixter guys, and of course, that's a Jersey thing. I don't think that would happen in LA, and I talk about, when we went out to LA all the time, about how different it was for us because, the Jersey, New York music community, we would take care of each other. The Skid Row guys, the Bon Jovi guys, they looked after us. They took care of us. No, you need this lawyer, you need this booking agent, you need to do, in LA, man, bands, it was
They were all
way
fighting. Everybody was
dog eat
fighting.
dog.
Yeah.
They would steal your guitars and throw them in the dumpster before you
Yep.
show, because
Yep.
that's how cutthroat the competition was. I remember playing this place, Mingles, down in South Jersey on Route 35 with Trixter.
35.
And
Yeah.
for some reason during the show, I blew up, I kid you not, Sarah, I blew up 3 Marshall heads. And Scotty Hill from Skid Row was there, and he was still living with Snake, and Snake's apartment was like a block away. While we were playing, he saw how much trouble I was having. He went home, drove back to his apartment, and brought back a Marshall head for me to be able to finish the show that night.
Wow.
And if that doesn't tell you,
Yeah.
would never,
Well,
that
that
would
whole little
never
area,
happen.
Route 35, I talked with Zach Wilde about it because I read that book about the 80s,
Yeah.
and you were quoted in it, Nothing But a Good Time, it was called. But I think the one thing that they forgot, we had our own little Sunset Strip along that area, at that period of time. And
Yeah,
it
I
was
guess
Close
so.
Encounters and Mingles and,
Yeah.
all those places that all the bands, were playing at that time. And you're right, there
Up
was
the
a
Birch
brotherhood.
Hill.
Yeah, Birch Hill. Yeah, Birch Hill.
The playpen and the
Art
Birch Hill.
Stock's
Yeah.
playpen. Yes.
Yeah.
And we would go, my girlfriends would go with our big hair and, we'd hit all the different who's playing at this bar. And then we go down a little bit and who's playing, and we make the U-turn and we go back again. And the Club Benet was there, and they were just, everybody was hanging out. And it was just such a cool period of time. And I also thought the one thing they left out of the book, and you were a part of this too, I was getting into radio at that time. That was the very beginning of my career. And I was a kid. I wasn't old enough to drink in bars when I first got in, but I was in them doing appearances.
Me too.
And, there was a new format that was invented for radio. We called it Rock 40. And, I remember I was working at WPST playing Poison and New Kids on the Block songs, like in the same hour,
Yeah.
because that revolution of that 80s music was so gigantic that it just was not to be ignored. And you couldn't just leave it on rock radio stations because everybody wanted to hear it on every radio station.
Yeah.
And we had a different, that hairband music of the 80s that people laugh at, but it was powering so much of the way that we did everything, including radio station formats, which you can't say that about every period of music and time. There's classic rock formats, but we had this Rock 40 thing because you needed to play those bands to be able to, to move on. So Def Leppard,
Yeah.
I remember doing matches with Def Leppard and Trixter and Guns N' Roses, and it was like just crazy.
Oh,
It was just
man.
absolutely crazy. So, but you know what? You do so much. So I want to talk about your new solo tune, which is so incredibly great. My God, I forgot what an awesome bluesy guitar player you are. And then I heard Where Do We Run? And I was like, oh my God, that is Steve at his absolute finest. So talk to me a little bit about, your solo career and how your solo career has unfolded.
Oh, well, I mean, solo career, that's pretty funny. And thank you for saying that. And thanks for the kind words about it. So Where Do We Run? It's a unique story. It's kind of a pandemic, another, as we were talking about before, sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, something positive that came out of the pandemic was, so during the time, look, we didn't know what was going to happen, but I always have to work. And thank God I was blessed. No matter what, I'm always busy in the studio. So if I'm not playing live, I got enough work here in the studio where I'm good, But long story short, I used that opportunity where I knew I wasn't going to be playing for a long time to do what we all in the business, we do what we call like tape transfers and digitizing. So for the last, year, I've been transferring all of my original, going back to 1986, which I have the tape back there, my first original 8-track analog tape, the first Trixter demos that we did with our good friend John Chrissy at his house in Paramus. And so I was doing all this stuff years and years from 86. And so I discovered some of my stuff from the 90s because my studio back then, we would record on these ADAT tapes, which are basically super digital 8 millimeter, videotapes. And so I had to dump everything into Pro Tools, as we like to say. And I came upon, I got to be honest with you, probably 10 or 20 songs, first off, that I don't even remember writing, let alone even recording. Where Do We Run was one of those songs. And as I'm transferring it, I'm going, wow, this song is really good. I forgot about it. And I go, you know what? This song is so important for all that the world is going through, all that we're going through in this country, the nuttiness, and I don't need to get into the political end and just how divided we were and how kind of hopeless a lot of people felt. So the lyrics of the song really spoke to me. And I know that when lyrics speak to me, I know that they're going to speak to the masses. Because I feel emotions that everybody feels. And I thought that this song was going to be perfect. So it was kind of in a rough form. It wasn't finished like the way you hear it now, but the goal was that I was going to release my first ever solo song because I'd never really done that. You're wearing the t-shirt. There was 40-Foot Ringo, Throwing Rocks, Soaked, all these Stereo Fallout, all these different bands after Trixter, but I had never ever released a solo single. Besides, I did a Kiss cover years ago of the song A Million to One that I released, and that's out, which got a great response. But it was always like, Steve, when are you going to put out a solo record? And I got to be honest with you, Tara, everything that I've ever done from the Trixter days on is kind of has a solo thing to it because I write the stuff. All the Trixter songs I sang before Pete ever sang. I would write the song, make a demo, sing it, and then give it to Pete and say, this is the song, because Pete really wasn't a musical singer. Great singer, great voice, but not a creative vocalist, if you
You
know
are
what I
always a
mean.
visionary. I mean, there's no,
Yeah.
there
That,
there are people that are visionaries, and then people that are the executioners, and then but you're somebody who's always been both. I think,
mm-hmm.
you've always, your mind has always worked as the
Yeah,
visionary and the executioner, and it's always brilliant. I always say, for employees, there are people that have a great idea about things, and then people who actually get shit done. And it's
sure.
wonderful if you're able to do both, and your mind is always working musically. And
No,
it's a
in
little
so
odd
many
to see
ways.
you, though.
Oh,
It's a little odd to see you alone, because you are also someone who plays nice with others. Not everybody can say that in music.
yeah,
You've had time. Look, you were in, Def Leppard, as a very important touring component, on and off,
sure.
for multiple tours. Um, so I want to talk about that for a moment. You filled in for Viv, when Viv was unable to perform, going through
Hmm.
some health issues. So how did that come to be? I know that you and Joe are tight, and were you just someone that the band said, "Oh, let's just call Steve. He's going to be a good fit for this."
Well, the Def Leppard thing goes back 30 years, So long story short, when Trixter was really starting to, gain momentum in 1988, ironically, I was playing in Staten Island in a Van Halen, a really rough Van Halen tribute band, just to have fun. And we were playing this place. And after the show, this guy comes up to me and he goes, "I want to talk to you." He goes, you have that Eddie thing, the way you play your vibrato." And he was going on and on about my playing and the rhythm. And, he's like, "Forget about the lead stuff. You got," and he goes, "Do you have a band?" And I go, "Yeah, I got a band, Trixter." And he goes, "Oh, I heard of you." He's like, "I'm going to come see you. But long story short, I'm going to manage you." Is this guy, Ken Mako, who wound up becoming our manager. Long story short, Ken Mako and his partner Joel were sort of, how do I say, proteges of Q Prime Management, the great Peter Mensch and Cliff
Yep,
Bernstein.
sure.
And so long story short, when we signed on with Shark Entertainment, Ken and Joel, to be our managers with Trixter, the first thing that they did was bring me in to meet Peter Mensch at his place in New York City. And Peter Mensch, for all you people who don't know, is probably one of the greatest rock managers ever. Metallica, Def Leppard, managing Journey now, managed Madonna for a little bit. Just the biggest of the best. And Cliff and Peter are just legends. But long story short, I go to his apartment and, he's talking to me. "Yeah, I'm going to help Ken and I'm going to help you guys. I really like you guys. You're young. You guys remind me of a young Def Leppard." And of course, that was the inspiration for Trixter, and I say this all the time, and I've told Rick Allen the story. I remember finding out about Def Leppard in 1980 when On Through the Night came out. And I saw that Rick Allen was 15 or 16 years old. And I said, "Man, I'm going to beat that guy to the punch. I'm going to be the youngest band." And that was kind of the marketing part of me. That was like, how is Trixter going to break through? And my thing was, we're going to be a young Van Halen, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi. We're going to be the youngest. And what did the press call us? The new kids on the block of rock, but as you know, Terry, as great as the music can be, the image, you got to have a gimmick.
Oh, absolutely. You need a brand. What is the brand, and what is going to get you the #1 slot on, I guess at the time it was called Dial MTV, and you guys had it. And those are the things that mattered. Those at the time, those are the things that mattered. I was talking to somebody else recently about John Waite. And we talked about his time in Bad English, and he said, "It really wasn't my cup of tea." But at that time, the corporate machine dictated how successful you want to be. And look, you want to be in a band that people are going to hear.
Sure.
So, to get that slot on the #1 slot on Dial MTV is a big deal. So that connection then with Q Prime sort of forged that friendship with the Def Leppard guys.
With Def Leppard. So then fast forward 1988, I go backstage. Def Leppard's playing 3 nights at the Meadowlands, and we're there every night. And Phil Collin and I, the friendship started out with Phil Collin. We just hit it off immediately, talking about guitars and gear, and he's such a gearhead. and he gave me his number. And the funny story, I've told this before, I spent my senior prom, instead of going to the senior prom, I went to Def Leppard. They did a spirit contest for one of the big CHR radio stations back in the day at the Capitol Theater in Passaic.
Wow.
And we were there, all of us, we were there hanging out with Def Leppard. But ironically, that's where my life was headed. I wasn't going to my senior prom, I'm going to hang out with Def Leppard. And of course,
was your wife like it? Was your wife like in the Molly Ringwald movie? What about prom, Steve? What about prom, Steve?
Nah, it was never about that. But long story short, Phil and I had developed a, friendship that is endeared for all these years. And he, those guys, the Leppard guys, have always been so cool. Much like Ed and Alex Van Halen, how down to earth they are. They're just great guys. They were raised by good families. They're just so, you've met them. They're, oh, Steve, that's brilliant. It's great.
Solid people.
So cool. And we hit it off. And long story short, it's just been, I've been friends with all those guys and became friends with Joe and Sav and Rick and Viv, of course, and Viv was a hero of mine when he was in Dio, and I remember Vivian, he was 19 years old, again, a youthful guy who gets this big gig. He was an inspiration to me. I remember seeing Dio and Dokken at the Meadowlands and at the Garden, and, so it just goes on in the friendship. And long story short, when Viv got diagnosed with cancer in 2013, Phil, went to the guys, and 40 Foot Ringo plays into this because Joe is such a, sort of cheap trick, pop, melodic rock, British guy. They loved the Throwing Rocks band that I had, PJ and I had after Trixter. They loved Soak. They loved all of my post Trixter bands and 40 Foot Ringo. So we were supposed to actually go on tour with Def Leppard in, I think, 2001, but we didn't have tour support because we didn't have a real record deal. So, Joe was such a big fan. Oh, I love that song, Inside Your Head's great. I love that track, mate. Love that. Love your voice. They were big. So when it came down to it, Phil was the one who said, when they knew they were going to have to get a replacement for Viv and have a backup guy. They were, Phil was like, I got the guy. It's Steve. Joe was like, oh, great. And that's how it happened, but most people don't realize the guitar playing, and my fancy dancing, if you will, that wasn't the reason that I got the gig. It was because of the vocals. And it's because Def Leppard, there are no backing tracks with Def Leppard. They don't can any of their vocals, which means put it in a sampler, run tracks, like a lot of bands do and like a lot of bands did. The vocals are hugely important. And, luckily for me, that scratchy sort of voice, I can do the Mutt Lang, because Mutt did so many of those backing vocals, the step inside, walk this way, you and me, babe, all that stuff. That I could do that stuff. So it was just immediate. And then, fast forward to September of 2014, when I sort of got thrown to the lions, if you will. My first show at Def Leppard was playing Wembley Stadium for the NFL, pregame in front of 90,000 people,
Wow.
And the rest is history.
And you've been a seamless member when they need you. I also want to talk about the Wizards of Winter, which you've been a part of since, I guess, 2019.
Yes,
Wizards have been together since 2009, and you jumped on board. And it started out as sort of a New Jersey charity thing, and has just really kind of taken on a life of its own. There's a date coming to the Bergen Pack in Englewood, and I love the Pack. It's one of the greatest sounding places to play. Tony Bennett doesn't make a live record at the Pack if the sound sucks. It's such an awesome place. So talk to me about your involvement with Wizards of Winter, and we're going to be giving away tickets. So what can people expect when they come out to check out Wizards of Winter on December 15th?
Well, Wizards of Winter, we just had our first full band rehearsal yesterday. We are back in the swing, and it started out, 2019, my good friend Greg Smith, who's also the bass player in my band Tokyo Motor Fist, with Chuck Berge from Billy Joel and Ted Poley from Danger Danger.
Yeah, Greg's you got that going on too.
Yeah. I mean, we go on for days, all the projects. But Wizards of Winter. So Greg came to me a couple years ago and said, "Hey man, we need a guitar player. Would you be into this?" And I had met Sharon and Scott Kelly, who are the the band leaders,
Yeah, the
husband and wife
founders. Yep.
team from they live down in South Jersey, and great people. I met them and I knew it was going to be perfect because again, and we were talking about it yesterday, we're Jersey people. We get along so good together. And it was just an incredible thing for me to be part of, doing this sort of holiday show. Christmas time, as you know, Tara, is one of my favorite times a year. You guys played my Christmas song, "Rockin' Christmas Time,"
Oh,
all
we
the
always do.
time, and
We every year.
I thank you so much for that. And I got to tell you, I'm finally getting CDs pressed. There's going to be a single for "Rockin' Christmas Time," and
Ooh.
DHA. You guys are going to be getting the first batch for giveaways for all your beautiful listeners.
Excellent.
And
And I have a great idea too. Holiday time, you should come out and you can do like an hour of your favorite rock holiday songs on the air. Let's do something like that if you
I
love
would I
holiday.
would love that. Guaranteed. And I'll wear a Santa
All
suit
right,
if
good, because
you
I'm always
supply one.
A Scroogey mother trucker, so you'll get me in a better mood for the holidays.
Yeah, so
All right.
Wizards of Winter, again, it's just one of these bands. I also play in this great show band, Rubik's Cube, which is an 80s thing. So I always love challenging myself. And Wizards of Winter, very much like the TSO Christmas holiday with hard rock guitar, symphony. I love that stuff. I just got done playing Carnegie Hall with Kit Wakely, another rock symphony thing. It's kind
Wow.
of, for me, it's been something that really speaks to me because when I was a kid, I don't know if you know this, but I actually took violin lessons because I read in Guitar World magazine that Eddie Van Halen was playing a lot of cello. So I thought that would be cool if I started playing violin. But long story short, it was a summer thing. All I really did on the violin was play Van Halen stuff on the violin. I would do the tapping on it, but it was a start. And I love Paganini. I love, Mozart, Beethoven. I love classical music. So to do the Wizards of Winter, again, the people, Sharon and Scott, the band, John O'Reilly's the drummer. He was in Rainbow. He was in, he was in TSO for 15 years, a lot of TSO alumni. My bandmate from Rubik's Cube, who sadly, died years ago, David Z from
Sure. It
ZO2,
was such a sad,
so,
sad,
oh
sad
God.
situation there. Yeah.
But
Horrible.
what a better way to, of course, honor people, when you're doing something that, as always, the holiday time, it's all in your heart and soul and the love. And, again, I don't have to tell you how much I love Christmas. I remember 40 Foot Ringo opened for David Lee Roth at the DHA
Yes.
Christmas
Yes.
concert years ago.
Starland
That was
Ballroom, opening night of Starland Ballroom.
That's right. And
So
that
much
was
fun.
I just got the video footage that we have of us playing. So I'll put a clip together for you. But,
Fabulous.
a dream come true. Opening for Dave, was just one of those great nights. And you guys were playing Rockin' Christmas Time. So, Wizards of Winter, we were 2019, we had 25 shows, did, a great tour all around the country. And it's a phenomenal show. Again, it's something for everybody, from little kids to rock musicians to classical musicians. Whatever you like, there's something for everybody in a Wizards of Winter show. And it's ultimately the Christmas dream, and it's something that will bring the whole family together. And in this day and age, it's something the world, and especially America, needs: some good, wholesome family entertainment based around some serious rock and roll guitar mixed with, holiday music and classical
Yeah,
music.
that
So
whole
you can't go wrong.
experience, that whole
Yes,
experience. Bergenpack.org, by the way, to get your tickets. WDHA
sure.
has lots of giveaways coming up too for Wizards of Winter. We love
Yeah,
our friends at the Bergen Pack. And, there's just always so much to chat with you about. It's always so good to see you. We usually run
yes.
into each other places. And I've been meaning to get you on, this feature. And I said, I gotta email Steve. I gotta email Steve and get him in for Reconnect with Rockers. And I'd love to
Yeah.
have you come out to the station, and we'll do something around the holidays. Have you come out and do kind of guest DJ and be in the All Request Lunch Hour with me and stuff.
I would love it. I
Love,
would,
love,
and
love it.
like I told you, hopefully I'll have the copies of. It's going to be Rockin' Christmas Time and Where Do We Run? So it's going to be a limited edition,
Nice.
but you guys are going to get, and we'll give away a bunch because of course, you and Matt Murray were such great supporters, and you've, Tara, just let me tell you how much I love you. New Jersey loves you. You are a rock radio icon,
Oh
and you
gosh,
have
you're so sweet.
supported so many bands, and most importantly, all of my bands. Soaked, Throwing Rocks, Trixter, 40-Foot Ringo, Stereo Fallout, Tokyo Motor Fist, all the bands. And I gotta say, man, Steve Brown, PJ Farley, we've had the craziest name for rock bands. It's unbelievable. So all you listeners, if you ever need a band name, just contact us and we'll get you a
Contact the
crazy name.
guys.
But again, Tara, and everybody at DHA, we love you guys for all of the support, and we couldn't have done it without you. And what I always tell everybody, I'm 51 years old. What a journey. It's been 35 plus years now. The next 50 years are going to be even better. So we can't wait to take the journey with you.
Steve, I love you. Thank you so much for being on with me.
God bless everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks, DHA. Love you.
DHA's Reconnect with Rockers is powered by Karas Lock Company, your full-service locksmith, and Dover Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram on Route 46 in Rockaway.